Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining our live broadcast from today. My name is Tony Beeston, and I'll be hosting your event. Briefly, some housekeeping. We are on a public webinar, so your phone lines will remain on mute. Please use the questions section in BrightTalk to raise any questions you have from today's presentation. Stefan will go through these at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to you through the same link you joined with today. So if you want to review it over the coming week or share with others, you can. Now, with that done, I'd like to introduce you to Stefan Orvat, our speaker for today. He has 20 years experience working in IT, specializing in infrastructure, virtualization technologies, and security. And he spent the last 3 years at Broadcom focusing on service orchestration. So he's the perfect person to take us through how to integrate your orchestration and automation tools into the ServiceNow catalog. You will hear how to enable business and IT users to request both simple and complex services for delivery in a matter of minutes. So without further ado, Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tony, and good morning, good afternoon also from my side. So please welcome here in this webinar. So I want to show you how our solution for service orchestration works in conjunction with the ServiceNow portal and the service catalog. So overall, I'm a bit wondering how many people are asking us over the few months with the question about how or do you support and how you support ServiceNow. So the most time, the customers are using ServiceNow as let's call it the classic ITSM solution where you create your tickets and your incidents and added a few things on. But with this webinar, I want to give you an insight of the possibilities, what else you can do with ServiceNow and how automation can support you to deliver a better IT service. So may you already know this current situation or this Gartner's quote over the last few years. It's talking about islands of automation, but it's still an interesting topic with the customers. They're still facing these challenges today. This is a typical scenario here. So each gear stands for a partner or a number of processes. For an example, I like or love to work with the virtual machine examples. So in this case, we want to start a provision with it to start a provisioning for virtual machines. But in this case, you have to work with the tools of VMware, Citrix, or Microsoft, or when you're using a cloud provider, they're offering their services like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Rackspace, and so on. But the next step, when the provisioning process has been finished, you want to have some applications on the virtual machine, otherwise it's an empty box. So for the application deployment, there you have other solutions in place like manual steps, scriptings, or software management suites, for example. And for the storage and for the network, you have the same challenges here. You have the manual steps, the historically grown scripts because they worked in the past, they're working right now, they will work in the future, and all the other management tools which exist for the storage and for the network too. The point is, each of them has to work together. So so there's no separate area anymore. So when you request a new business service, or as an example here, a new virtual machine, all the pieces have to work together. So there the challenge is, or are the existing tools, because they have been added tactically. So the IT decided to implement a solution or a tool because they needed. They had an issue, they had a project at this time, and put in this tool in place to fix exactly this one situation. They didn't have the time or the look on the big picture. But now, today, in times where the complexity and the expectations are growing and everything is getting closer to each other, there's a need of an overarching architecture to enable all these pieces and many more. So they are acting with each other. So everything has to work together very smoothly. And this is what we are talking today. But let's begin with a reality check for the business. Later, let's have a reality check for the IT or from the IT perspective. The business requires here an immediate access to a service which already exists in the background, or you have to create a new one. But they still often wait days or weeks instead of minutes. In the mid, you have your opinion or your perspective on a self-service is it should be accelerate everything, and it should also saving the cost. But the savings never occur. And at the end of the day, when you ignore all the technical challenges I mentioned before, you have also another challenge. The challenge is the human. You have between the gears in the first slide, you have also the requirement for manual human approvals. So it's a nightmare when you compare the technical processes, how long does it take to provision an environment from a technical perspective, and now let's add the speed of manual approval processes. Then it slows down immediately and it becomes to a nightmare. So and here's a reality check for the IT. So when you talk about self-service or self-service catalogs, you speak about the sheer complexity of tools. So remember the first slide, the islands of automation. You offer a self-service, you offer only a self-service for each island of automation. It's not possible to do it otherwise. So when you offer, from a usability perspective, it's a nightmare. So you need to know where is my right self-service portal to browse on this portal, to type in my information and have finger crossing, wish good luck to this incident, someone will fix it in the background. It's still a manual effort. So the most time the self-service portals are not well integrated and only creating tickets, not more. So it creates a ticket, recognize it's the wrong department, so it hands over to the next department to fulfill, maybe in this example, our virtual machine. Then the first step said, I need a virtual machine. Next step, I need the application deployment. Third step, I need the storage. It's a handover between the departments. I need to get my result completely virtual machine. But the customer, and this is in time of consumerization, a biggest challenge from an IT perspective is their high expectations on the service level. So they want to request a service and they want to have the request service very, very fast because it's working outside of your company. Why shouldn't work inside of the company where the way of communications are much shorter? Overall, this is not a rip and replace strategy like all the other solutions out there when you're focusing on a cloud provider. There's the cloud providers are offering now a better solutions than in the past, but in nowadays you're working with the best of breed, and then it's not possible to have a best of breed because you have to pray that your cloud provider is offering the solution for you. And when automation becomes more and more important, we talk about the enterprise solution with an enterprise capabilities like high availability and scalability, also about scheduling and calendar handling. Calendar handling is still a big topic. It's otherwise you want to create with this overarching architecture. You want to create a car, a real fast car. With this island of automation, you create a car without a fuel. So you have to hand over. So the challenge is, to summarize it, the first time is it's always a challenge, this growth of IT complexity. The number is not decreasing, it's increasing. But it's also about the reliability and the scalability of your systems. Or how do you want to scale with scripting? So this is also one of our discussions with customers. Yeah, I have already wrote a script. Yeah, it's fine. The script is working. It will create a result, but you have no idea about the result itself. It's not visible. You have to find out. You can't scale it. It's not scalable, and it's not reliable. You get not the information from your scripts. For all these 3 points, there's also requirement for this visibility. You have to know what happens and how it works, or the user needs to know about the current status of his ticket, for example, or his requested service. Next, this is a real world customer scenario. This is from a telecommunication provider in Europe. It's real numbers from the customer. It's incredible high, I know, but these are real numbers. So you can also adapt this every single 7 step and put in your numbers. So when the user requests a virtual machine at this IT service desk, it takes time, or in this case, it took time because our solution is already in place, of course. Here, every single step required a manual step or effort in the processes. So you can put in your numbers here, but overall, this total number on the last line, it's still in days. For example, when you go on Google and look for analysts about this provisioning processes, the analysts always talk about a minimum of 5 days. So you add now the manual processes and approval processes, so the number is growing rapidly. But self-service is not only for IT. Every time when you're talking about IT services, everybody starts with this, I think it's the most famous example, password reset. But it's much, much, much more. Password reset, I think this is something from, it's 20 years old, this example, but it's still a current example. But it's more than IT operations. It's also something for the business and also for the development for these departments. So first, for the business, it's all about the customer on and offboarding, for example. This is also a real-time example from another telecommunication provider who was focusing on the customer onboarding, but it's also adaptable for your end users, the on and offboarding. Most time you're talking about the onboarding, but what happens when the colleague left the building, what happens afterwards. So you have to start this offboarding process, otherwise you will have a security breach, for example. But it's also about application deployment or starting or creating a SAP system copy, for example. This is also a good example for self-service catalog from a business perspective. For the dev people, it's most time you're talking about the full stack provisioning to deliver application-ready infrastructure with middleware like JBoss, for example. I will show it later. I have a demo therefore, and all the other stuff. And for the IT operations, there's a huge number of examples. I mean, it's like backup and provisioning of infrastructure, but it can also be another topics like automated server patching or automated disaster recovery plan, provisioning and deprovisioning, also important facts, and so many more. So, but later I will show you a few examples here. Maybe a bit deeper, started talking about this overarching architecture and going back to Google or a different searching engine and type in, you will find a word called Uber-Orchestrator. Let's focus on this Uber-Orchestrator as an overarching architecture. It's like it acts like a master of puppets, but the question is, what are the puppets for? So what can be the results and how you can build the bridges between these items with this overarching architecture? I already mentioned this deprovisioning processes. When you already started in the past, a trial request on our website, and after 10, 15 minutes, you will receive an email and get these information about this request. You have access to a sandbox which has been hosted on our environment. You have access to, and when you receive this email, at this time, we also schedule the deprovisioning processes. What does it mean? In the past, when I started 3 years ago, I received an email after 20 days, and with the question is, hey, everything is fine, you're testing with this environment, do you have any further questions? If you're not answering on this email, it's after 10 days later, the environment will be deprovisioned. Otherwise, you can have this environment maybe a bit longer when you have the conversation with the salesperson. So otherwise, what does it mean to me from my good old administrator perspective is when I travel back in time and we're starting up with the virtual machines and nobody cares about storage. Storage is cheap, it's not. You're creating so many machines, but in over a few weeks, you had a bunch of zombie virtual machines out there. Most time, provisioning is like or provision a server or provision a resource is something like a fire and forget. You provision it and period. But it's also about deprovision. Deprovision is important because it can save costs and can also decrease the number of security breaches, for example. Maybe you already heard about this server on Monday or on Tuesday, where the people find a deprovision server at Azure, which has offered 85 million data sets about families in US. If you had a deprovision process, it wouldn't happen. There's also a point about the patching, apply patches and updates. So patches becomes more and more a topic. So 2 years ago, I was on an event and had a short chat with the administrator after he presented some slides about his challenges. I didn't understand the slides, to be honest, because it was in Czech, but there are a few words I understood because the words were Windows Service, Update Service. And so I'm getting very curious and have a chat afterwards with him. What he did is he had already the atomic automation engine in place in his data center, and he felt a bit bored about this doing the stuff around these Windows Update services because he had to patch 400 Windows servers in his environment. So he focused on this Windows server and checked what he has to do when he checked the Windows updates. What he did was he rebooted the server, he installed the patches after the reboot, and finished it with the second reboot and generate a report. So this step for each server cost 30 minutes for each server, 400 servers, and he automated it completely. So he saved a lot of time and focused on much more important things he has to do. But it's also about the self-service request on the right top corner. This is, I think, is the most interesting point here. It's all about to realize an end-to-end automation with an overarching architecture. So this is where ServiceNow comes in place. So it will be ServiceNow will be used here as let's call it single point of class for your users. So there's just only one place where they can start the service request for the business, for the dev people, or for some IT services. So we can also put in your famous password reset here. So, but overall, it doesn't matter what kind of resource do you or they like to address. It's in the cloud, it's in the local center. I don't care, you don't care. Overall, at the end of the day, what you want to deliver is a good service fast, and the end users want to start a request and want to have a good service fast. So they have these high expectations. Why? Because AWS or Dropbox or take any cloud-based service, you are interested in a trial, you fill out these forms, 30 seconds later, you have your access to this environment. So, but why can't you deliver it in your environment in the company's IT? I promise this is the only technical slide I will show you today. Here, I need my cursor. Okay. Here you have the end user. The end user interacts with the self-service portal. Here in this example, it's the ServiceNow portal. That's it from the end user perspective. In the background, we have this atomic automation engine, which communicates between all the stuff, the master of properties. You remember? We recognize, hey, the user is starting a service request for something, virtual machines, for example. And we initiate the provisioning process because we are able to, because we have contact with the web services. It's very important to handle the web service like REST and SOAP APIs, for example, to trigger the world out to trigger the world in the cloud, for example, AWS, Azure, whatever. Or we can connect to, with the help of SSH to Unix systems, can communicate with SQL servers, WMI, PowerShell, whatever you want. We have a huge number of for agents for different operating systems. It's different. I didn't mean 5. I mean a lot of more. It's up to the PS2000s, very old stuff. It's also supporting mainframe, for example, and create and adapt this requested service in the background. And at the end of the day, we can also create an entry into your CMDB, for example. So very important thing is you see here, it's not a rip and replace. You still can work with your, and your favorite is SCCM, for example, or Powered or Chef. Hey, keep it. We can work with the people. We talked to Chef and said, okay, hey, Chef, we need following stuff. Please do your job and give me some feedback so I can trigger the next step. This is the automation engine here. But there's a huge number of integrations we offer. You recognize it here. I mean, here's more about the business. It's about Salesforce. It's about addressing in Workday to automate something in Workday, maybe in the employee onboarding processes. Feel free. It's all about SAP, Siebel, PeopleSoft, Oracle. From the business perspective, for the dev people, here take a look at the left-hand side. It's what Puppet or Docker with Git. Also working with Git, for example, and all about the platform stuff, like Microsoft SUSE, for example, OpenStack, maybe a very interesting topic. People are talking more about this OpenStack stuff, so it's very interesting. And yeah, create your services. But why do you need the ServiceNow Service Connector? So what we see at every enterprise customer is there's one common service catalog. It feels like one for IT services and one another for the finance services and so on. Yeah, this is a nightmare for the usability, for the user experience. So as an end user, it feels a bit uncomfortable. So every department offers its own service catalog. But it should be a goal for the enterprise to offer one single service catalog. It must be a dream. It means to be more ITIL-like and very service-oriented. But it also means a higher standardized processes, so it's more stable for you. With this ServiceNow Service Connector, you are able to integrate the automation and the orchestration capabilities into your service catalog seamlessly. So the user did not recognize it. They just only see a colored icon and click on, and the process runs in the background. This is the dream for the end user, and you can deliver it with this with the ServiceNow connector, for example. This looks like. So here in this example, in this screenshot, this is a screenshot from ServiceNow Service Catalog. It's not a hidden picture, but there are 3 tiles which trigger an automation workflow in the background. These 3, for example. You see it here, it's one for the IT and it's one for the business. So we don't care about self-service is for IT services only. From an administrator perspective, so it's not really technical, it doesn't count. Here you had your workflows for this full stack provisioning that you're offering as an environment provisioning in this ServiceNow Service Catalog. Yes, of course, we also can deliver on our own service catalog, for example. Our goal, therefore, for offering a service catalog, not from an atomic perspective, it's more from an administrator perspective, keep it simple. Nobody cares about these 40, 50 parameters in the background. Keep it simple for the end users. So when the user wants to start a provision process for virtual machine to test something, for example, you shouldn't, or you won't ask him, hey, how many CPUs do you need? How many cores? he don't care because he's also not interested in. So keep it simple. In this case, we're just only asking 5 parameters about the platform. Where do you want to publish it? It's like AWS, Azure, so on. What kind of application do you want to test? Here in this example, we're offering a handful of applications, for example. The sizing, this is how many performance your virtual environment really required. Cost center, who is the guy who's paying the bill, and lifecycle, it's all about the deprovisioning. It's in every demo environment, because when we are testing something and 90% minimum, we'll forget to start the deprovisioning processes. So it's asked automatically. And this is what I want to show you. Here, you have this ServiceNow Service Catalog. And at this time, we start the provision server with application. So let's start this provisioning processes. Yeah, here's what we are already talked about the sizing. Let's take the medium. We want to see the TSC application on AWS, of course. And after, let's think about 30 minutes should be fine. Start the deprovisioning processes, and IT will pay the bill. I will order it as usual. No changes. Also, no changes. So you look as usual on my ServiceNow, but in the background, it triggered my atomic automation engine with this workflow you see here as a full stack provisioning. When we go to the provisioning process, you see it's a bit faster. He created a ticket on ServiceNow. He sent me an information as an email and on Flowdog. Flowdog is a chatbot from CA. He informs me on chatbot here, for example, that happened something. So you can also update the ticket. You can do it with a chatbot, for example. He gives me the information, all the required links, so I can also click on the links and jump back to my web interface or to my ServiceNow. The process already approved because nobody was asking for an approval. For this full stack provisioning, you also see here the JPros, for example, because I want to have a full stack provisioning, which means I need a virtual machine and I want to have an application on. So during this process, it's running on AWS because I triggered AWS outside of my building. So you jump to the management console here, the EC2 management console on AWS. You see here now it's my provisioning process, which has been initiated by my full stack provisioning workflow. It's still running. It takes a while. We don't accelerate the AWS. Okay, it's a bit faster. So it's finished. And when it's finished, I'm ready to install my JDK because I want to install JBoss, and JBoss needs my JDK, by the way. So because there's a reason why JBoss is the next step after JDK. And when I've finished my installation, I close the ticket, I schedule my deprovisioning, of course. I want to have a clean environment, writing some stats because I want to know something, and send an email to my user who requested it, and send him also a chatbot information. About the stats is also a very interesting thing, because with the stats, you have a wonderful insight of your environment. What happens here? You can calculate a few things. You can have it. You can see also what happens here. By the way, this is the deprovisioning process, and on chatbot, I received the final information about the URL where I can log on to see my requested application and my JBoss, and I can also check here the latest status of my ServiceNow ticket, for example. Let's take a look on the application. Application is already running, of course. It has been finished successfully. But another thing is you can also start a provisioning from a chatbot. You can use initialize here the provisioning process. You're asking why you're showing this, because it's about ServiceNow. Because with this process, I create the ServiceNow ticket. Because I initialize a standardized process or workflow to provision a virtual machine or a virtual machine with an application on. So it's the same environment like I requested before. Here you see the next my workflow, which is being initiated by the chatbot, but ServiceNow is recognized it and said, hey, by the way, I need an approval. And you can give me the approval here under the following link. Let's copy the link into the browser. And you see here on the corner here, it's requested and stopped. It needs approval. So let's approve it. You can see here is the same process with different parameters, and the process continued. But you also recognize that there were no parameters. I just only typed in on chatbot a command. When it's initiated without any additional parameters, I decided to provision the environment on my VMware infrastructure in my local data center because of saving costs. Just going back here on the dashboard, we talked about numbers. Here on the dashboard, you have the possibility to visualize the numbers you're collecting and creating in the background. So on the right-hand side, short refresh. Here on the right-hand side, you can also see how long does it take to run a process, for example. But let's focus on the provision and deploy process because this was one I initiated with the chatbot. And I see the process run nearly to less than 8 minutes, for example. On the left bottom corner, I can also calculate the cost. So I recognize when something roll out on AWS, for example, I collect the numbers for, and can calculate the cost for the AWS environment. It's not so cheap, not so expensive. That's the reason why it's so cheap here. It's just only for a few minutes, and when you provision something on AWS for a few minutes, it costs a few bucks. That's all. On the right bottom corner, you can create another steps. What is the most favorite cloud provider on our demo environment? Here, in this case, it's AWS because we have the most experience from pre-sales on AWS, for example. Every others are also very simple to implement. Yeah, and at the end of the day, you get also here the update on chatbot. Here are some examples from the customers. The first one is my favorite example is the first one, financial services. It's great because they adapted the top 10 of the they checked 4 months again. They checked for 4 months the list of the incidents and created the top 10 list, and this top 10 adapted it on Atomic One automation platform to create a self-service portal. But in the background, they had also other motivations. It's like they decreased the number of the time of the server provision from weeks to minutes. So it's by the way, it's not the example from the provisioning with the 20 days. It isn't. The help desk has a lower workload, so they are much faster to help the people out. They decrease the time from days to minutes. And very important points for them were to make it possible to test ideas faster, to create a new environment, to find out what happens better, and for testing. Overall, during this whole integration process, they're adapting 200 IT services, so the users also create users and user groups, and overall, they also handled 66,000 dependencies on their batch environment with the One Automation platform. In the mid, this is a European utility company. which is also adapting. I think it was also with ServiceNow, reduced the time from weeks to minutes. And the last one is the famous telco provider from the beginning. He reduced the time from 4 weeks. Oh my God, 4 weeks to 1 day. It's not really 1 day. I think it's a few hours now to start this provisioning processes. That's it. Before we start the Q&A session, here are some outlooks for the next 6-7 weeks. What will happen here on every Thursday. So next week we are talking about the CI and CD, so delivery topics. I will return on May 16th and talk about AI ops and automation. And 23rd May you have the SaaS recovery plan, which I also mentioned during the first slide, which is also an interesting part to automate, and many more. That's it. Tony?
Thank you very much indeed, Stefan. So please remember to type your questions in that you have for Stefan. We do have a couple that are already present, but I'll obviously give you a few more minutes to be able to type some more in. So Stefan, the first question that you've been asked by the audience are, what are the first steps to create this service catalog automation?
To be honest, there is no best solution ever where you have a wizard and you click through the wizard, and after 20 clicks, you're happy. To be honest, you have the best first steps in your hands. Take a look at the service incidents. What is the most important thing? The top 10, like the first example with the financial services. Find out what is the first top 10 in your on your service desk, which costs a lot of time because the most incidents can be solved on the first level, on the first contact touch. This is where I would start at the beginning. You need something easy. Don't move the whole model in the first step. Focus on the easier thing. You have a better feeling, you have better understanding of the environment, of your environment and the automation engine, what you can deliver to the end user, and see how the end user will react.
Thank you. That's probably very sage advice. Success does breed success, so start with something that not necessarily is easier, but is certainly quicker. The next question you have is specifically, more specific about the product. So do you support other IT service management solutions?
Of course. Of course. There's a handful of other solutions out there we are supporting. The most important thing for the ITSM solutions, I mean, it felt like thousands of ITSM solutions out there. What they have to offer is an API. This is the most important thing. When it's an older one, it's on a SOAP API, and the newer one, it's a REST API. When there's a REST API, they should deliver good parameters, and then we can work with them. By the way, what is working very well is also PMC, Remedy, for example.
Exactly. There's another question. It's a valid question. Is can we share the link to install the ServiceNow Connector and the documentation about it? After this event, I will get your contact details sent through on that question, because obviously we can't answer that here. But we will send those details through to you. Effectively, you can download it from the marketplace, but we'll send you all the relevant details that you need.
I forgot something. You remember the slide with the big X in the mid, with the Broadcom logo and the many other logos on. We're talking about this integration stuff. We are using the term of action packs. So these action packs can be found on the website, https://marketplace.atomic.com. I think Atomic is still Atomic, I think. There you see also a huge number what we also support, which I didn't mention during the presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Another question that's come through is, how's your experience with Atomic workflows integrating with the QA tools during the development and QA deployment stage, and what tools have we integrated with. Before you answer that, I would suggest to this person that you register for that webinar that was the CI/CD webinar that came up, because that will actually cover the entire app development space of which is integrating into those tools. But over to yourself, Stefan, for your view.
Yeah, trapped. Yeah, I have to deliver the answer because I don't want to hit the recorder. I want to give you a wrong answer. So I can give you an answer later on, which on a more quality. I have to ask a colleague which has a very strong focus on the dev stuff, on the dev tools, and this is a part of it.
Okay, that's fine. That's no problems whatsoever. Certainly, tools such as Selenium and all of those testing frameworks. There are action packs that you'll find on the marketplace as well. Okay, well, it seems we've got to the end of our questions. So with that, thank you, Stephen, for presenting Maximize ServiceNow with automated remediation. I hope you've all found it useful and are excited about the potential. Thank you all for attending today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for your time.